With YouTube attacking alternative media, please consider supporting the channel via Patreon for just $1 per month. Link below. The GDC, Games Developers Conference, or whatever the hell it's called. It's an event I wanted to attend a long time ago. When I used to live in California, I was like, man, I really want to go to E3. I really want to go to GDC. I want to hobnob with game developers. I want to get to know the people behind the masterpieces that I end up enjoying more often than not in my free time. But as time progressed and San Francisco became the absolute hellhole that it is in terms of social justice, man, I'm glad I didn't go, because GDC has gone what can only be described as full retard with this particular move right here, saying it rescinds Atari founder Nolan Bushnell's Pioneer Award after Me Too protests. So what you've got is the dude who founded Atari effectively taking video games into the home, right, in a mainstream way. This isn't, you know, the arcade world, which, don't get me wrong, it's freaking awesome, but this is the home world, right? It's a different environment, and this guy is getting denied a Pioneer Award because of accusations. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? Now, I should say real quick that this article was written by Jeff Grubb, who is a very, very noted male feminist online. So, and he's very much a listen and believer. So let's listen and believe, not really, to what he has to say. The Game Developers Conference has rescinded its Pioneer Award to Atari founder Nolan Bushnell. The former Atari executive has admitted to sexually inappropriate behavior in multiple interviews throughout the years. His stories usually come in the form of wild anecdotes about office environments in the 1970s, where objectification of women colleagues wasn't viewed as harassment by the male-led power structures of companies and other organizations. And that is a fair assessment to make. I won't disagree. The times in the 70s and the 60s were different. The Mad Men era is not something that was, I believe, completely exaggerated for effect. At the same time, what he has done lately, if it falls in line with that kind of stuff, then I could see this. But if it's just something from 40 years ago, is it really worth it? It's a question. The Events Advisory Committee plans to instead use this year's award as representation of the voices of women who left the industry in response to sexual misconduct. And you can best be sure that there will be a lot of GamerGate references come this particular award ceremony. And I honestly feel that it will either be Anita Sarkeesian or Brianna Wu who will in fact be presenting it. Probably Anita, because, you know, no one's been pushed further out of gaming than Anita Sarkeesian, who's still around even though nobody wants her here. In the GDC statement, it says, the Game Developers Choice Awards Advisory Committee, which votes on the special awards winners for each show, has made the decision not to give out a Pioneer Award for this year's events, following additional feedback from the community. They believe their pick should reflect the value of today's games industry and will dedicate this year's award to honor the pioneering and unheard voices of the past. Okay, I mean, it's a very political message. And part of me says, like, why not just give it to somebody else, for one, or two, why make it a pandering issue? Because that's ultimately what you're doing. You're ultimately pandering here, is what I see. Now, Bushnell himself responded by saying, I applaud the GDC for ensuring that their institution reflects what is right, specifically with regards to how people should be treated in the workplace. And if that means an award is the price I have to pay personally, so the whole industry may be more aware and sensitive to these issues, I applaud that too. If my personal actions or the actions of anyone who ever worked with me offended or caused pain to anyone at our companies, then I apologize without reservation. Which, again, is a fair political comeback, right? You know, hey, I'm fine with you guys taking this award away from me. Not like I need your recognition anyway. I mean, that's basically what he's saying here. He's like, oh, no, yeah, I really don't care. The guy's made his money. He's had hhis fun. What's this award going to do for him now? Nothing, ultimately. What does the GDC mean in terms of video games anymore? Nothing, really. The indie scene is controlled by the San Francisco elite in gaming, in indie gaming at least. And so that's really what GDC caters to. So yeah, no one cares about them anyway. Like, when's the last time we talked to anyone who's been like, oh my God, did you hear about Game Developers Conference? Did you hear the big announcement, the big reveal from the GDC? It's always like, oh, look at all the articles of them complaining about something, because that's mostly what you find out of it nowadays. Now, Bushnell isn't shy about its history of bringing sexual behavior into the office. An Atari executive remembers Bushnell wearing an I love to fuck t-shirt to the office, And Bushnell admitted to Playboy magazine that his team of developers would codename game projects after women in the office they found attractive. Pong, Atari's first hit, had the codename Darlene after a stacked employee. Now look, is that a right thing to do? No, I'm going to sit there and say no, it's not. Is it funny? Yeah, I know it is. Especially the I love to fuck t-shirt. Bringing that one into work, right? I mean, you can almost sit there and go, man, like who would do such a thing? The guy who created Atari. Nice. Like that's like, it was kind of like the wild times of the 70s. You know, the 60s had the sexual liberation, but that continued on to the 70s for a while. So it's entirely, it's entirely possible that when he came into work wearing a shirt that says I love to fuck, he was just swinging with the times, you know, like he was swinging with the times. And that's the real question you have to ask yourself here. Were other people that were there really problematic? Because it feels like these allegations are coming out of interviews that he had said and anecdotal stories that could actually be wild embellishments of what actually went on. You would need to get to talk to somebody who actually was there. Now, he goes on to say here in an interview with Playboy, it was post Flower Revolution, women's liberation, no AIDS yet, and lots of company romances. It was like the swinging 70s, I believe, is a term that they called it. That was a term that was used. Lots of swingers, lots of free love, lots of that kind of thing, and it ultimately, was part of the culture at the time. Now, according to Stephen L. Kent's The Ultimate History of Video Games, the Atari CEO hired men that agreed with his idea of office politics, and that led to Atari board meetings that seemed more like fraternity parties than business meetings. Jeez. Oh my God. That's like the lamest thing to ever be like, oh, they threw a frat party. It's like, yeah, they brought home the Atari. They're making lots of money. They're going to have, fun with it. In the wake of the Me Too movement that seeks to raise awareness on how men mistreat, harass, and abuse women at work and in other settings, or just how people can be maybe mistreated, harassed, or abused at work or in other settings. This is the thing, Jeff Grubb. Men can be victims too. I'm sorry, I have to be the one to tell you this. I understand that you are programmed at this point, brainwashed even, to not believe that. Hopefully one day you will see. Until then, continue writing this kind of drivel. But saying here, no woman has ever won GDC's Pioneer Award, which goes to people who built a breakthrough that changed gaming. Women like designer Brenda Romero and industry critic Anita Sarkeesian have won GDC's Ambassador Award for advancing the gaming medium through advocacy. Oh my God. Okay, look, I just have to say, what has Anita Sarkeesian done to advance anything outside of her, bank account? Like, truly, what has she done? Nothing. She travels around, she gives speeches, nothing ever changes, because a lot of the times what she's talking about are issues that are just artistic choices, artistic designs, and she's just critiquing that, but coming at it from a lens of like, this needs to change. There's a reason why after almost 6 years of Anita Sarkeesian now, no one cares about her, right? When we showed up to VidCon to see what she had to say, she chose to attack, right? Like, in order to play the victim narrative. That's kind of funny. Bushnell still active in gaming. His latest efforts include working on an advisory board for gaming cryptocurrency called Robot Cash. Well, I have a feeling Robot Cash, based upon this controversy, this nothing burger, is going to end up doing quite well for itself. However, what I mentioned before, why didn't they talk to somebody who had something to say? Right? Why didn't they talk to someone who had something who worked there? Oh, here's one. It's a little bit of a long one, but let's go through this. Here's from Lonnie Reeder, saying, so let's take a step back and look at the overall situation. I started with a 38-year-old disgruntled uber-feminist woman game designer from Massachusetts running for Congress who has less than stellar experience in the predominantly male-dominated video game space, resulting in what came to be known as GamerGate. Or I should say, it started, sorry. Using the Me Too movement in a moment from time for which he had no first-hand knowledge, and with zero complaints lodged against Nolan or complaints about the work culture by employees working at Atari during that time, and based on archival newspaper and magazines interviews with Nolan and others chatting about a work environment, time, and culture that existed 40 years ago, a work environment that everyone, men and women, happily worked in together and partied in together, or didn't party in, there was no pressure and no judgment, an environment that resulted in decade-long friendships, marriages, little Artarians, business partnerships, and frequent reunions, providing us with amazing memories, and for most of us spending the rest of our work careers attempting to replicate the magic of the Camelot that we were lucky enough to work in. By arming herself with the topical movement and being personally disgruntled and offended by an environment existing 40 years ago of which she played no part in, an environment she had zero firsthand knowledge of, and initiating those of us who worked with or around Nolan, Alcorn, Gene Lipkin, and Landrum, Joe Keenan, Steve Bristow, and the rest of the Mahogany Row had been sexually assaulted, abused, and disrespected, in her estimation, abominations to the male species. Yes, based on her personal or political aspirations, personal assumptions, and libelous accusations against a man where no complaints have been raised or filed, she made a big, unfounded noise against Nolan, and the Pioneer Award honor was withdrawn. Atari was a large corporation with many facilities, but I worked in the corporate headquarters, interfaced with every department in the company as part of the communications, security, and facilities groups, and in being adopted by the coin-op and industrial design groups, I also spent a great deal of time in the engineering hot tub building, which would be two locations where most of the fun and craziness occurred. From my vantage point, having a first-hand perspective of this time and the Atari environment, what has been done to Nolan is falsely mischaracterizing him for a lifestyle that did no harm or wrong to anyone. Nolan created a company environment which opened the doors to many women in the field where they were never included before, high tech. Nolan never discriminated on any level and gave everyone a chance to prove their own merits that they could be part of Atari, from soldering boards to building arcade cabinets to drawing schematics, artwork, working on the assembly line. For me personally, Nolan was the final word in my being hired at Atari, my first full-time job after college. He continued his belief in me years later when we co-founded U-Wink in Los Angeles, where I became an equally compensated vice president. Nolan never profiled a person by their gender as to whether or not they were fit for the job. He based his decisions on the person's skill, ability, and passion for the job. Because of that belief, we always rose to the occasion. We were a bonded teamship and a family. Atari also saw a woman, the amazing Carol Shaw, go on to fame. For me, and I'm sure other women who will weigh in, while this feminazi congresswoman wannabe may believe all she's doing Atari womankind a favor, in reality she's done us a disservice by creating victims where there were none. Personally, I am extremely angered by her words and conduct in this matter, not just for Nolan, but for the women of Atari, all of us. We all were and remain to this day extremely strong and intelligent women, and there isn't any man who would dare take advantage of us, not if they intended to procreate in the future. My other anger is the callous and unnecessary hurt I'm sure this matter has inflicted on Nancy and their kids and grandkids. I'm assuming that's Nolan's wife. Finally, by not doing their due diligence before terminating the honor, the GDC did a disservice to Nolan, to my fellow Atarians, and to the truth. Nolan was an extremely gracious in this matter via his tweet. Hopefully the GDC will right this misstep on their part in the future. And we can only hope that. Now, Brianna Wu being the person who kind of progenited this entire freaking witch hunt, and that's what it is. It's a witch hunt. She has gone on to say on Twitter, and I can't show you because I'm blocked, but she went on to say on Twitter that she's very happy for what happened, essentially. She's saying that she survived GamerGate, as if GamerGate was anything more than people online seeking ethics in video game journalism. You know, that's going to be on her freaking tombstone at this point, given how many times she's lied over it over the years and used it to try to push some kind of political advantage. But at the same time, she's, you know, gone on to say, and this is where I think she's trying to backpedal a little bit, just back it up, you know, kind of, she says that she still feels he deserves this award, just not right now. If that was the case, Brianna, you would have definitely, you know, not brought this up, right? If you feel he could still have the award down the road, he wouldn't have made this a stink, right? All she's trying to do is put herself in the newspaper and put herself out there by people like Jeffrey Grubb here, who, and just to let you know, my first interaction with him was when I questioned whether or not Brianna being doxxed on 8chan back in 2014 was a legitimate thing, because when the dox came up, I was on 4chan at the time, or on 8chan at the time, and I saw the thread, I saw the post, I saw everyone basically telling that person to F off, and then, you know, the post went away, but she was able to turn the narrative into something that was victimhood, and I said, well, it's possible she was lying about it, and he was like, how dare you say that? I'm like, it's a question. I can't prove it. You can't prove it. She won't prove it if she is lying. Or so, you know, but this is the mindset. This is the mindset that we see. This is what happens. Nolan Bushnell loses an award, and it's lame.